Hi guys, welcome back to Miscellaneous Pleasures. Oh, you have no idea the glee, the smile that was on my face about 10 hours ago. Like that moment when Rishabh Pant hit that boundary or ran the double, I don't really care. Yeah, that was something else. That was absolutely something else. Today has been something else, and this test series has been something else. It's, I mean, I will give my review and all those sort type of things, but I felt like this video required me to do something that perhaps I haven't done before, especially talking of cricket. And in the typical style of Mr. Harsha Bogle, I would like to let my mind travel back to. It was, I think, I'm not too sure. I think it was 2003, 2004 series where it was the Rahul Dravid punch of the back foot in the 233 game. In the game that he scored 233 in the second innings, he finished off the chase. That's the earliest memory of cricket I have. I mean, at the time, I think I was close to five, and like I wasn't really interested in cricket. I do remember it used to be on the television, either my grandfather or my father or somebody would be watching it. And I wouldn't really be bothered with it. To an extent, I would admit that I would feel bored by the game. But then at the time, I didn't know really a lot of things. But that one shot, that winning shot, is something that is etched in my memory. And over the years, I've watched that video clip, the whole highlights of the game. I don't particularly remember the game because, as I said, the only memory of the game or of the day I have is that one particular shot of Rahul Dravid. And that was probably the first time I actually watched the game. And yeah, uh, to be fair, the next memory that I probably have is the Mahendra Singh Dhoni 183 not out. The funny thing is, I'm not really sure if he scored the 148 first against Pakistan or was it the 183 that he scored first. What I do know is that, as I said, at this time, even though I watched this game, when I say I watched the game, I mean I watched parts of this game and especially the winning runs. I wasn't a regular watcher of television or cricket or anything of the sorts. And it was, I think, one of those weekends, this game. I'm pretty sure because I was in the house. Uh, I don't really remember watching the Sri Lankan innings. I do remember that. I do know that Kumar Sangakkara actually scored a century, if I'm not mistaken, and they gave a target of about 290, but I don't really remember anything by watching the game. I just remember it by watching the highlights that I've done over the years. But what I do remember is I think it was Tendulkar who got out in the first over or in the second over or something like that to the slips, and Dhoni came in. I do remember that there were a couple of surprises in my house, but then nobody was really that into the game. My grandfather was, but then he didn't really comment on things like this way too often. And at the time, I remember my mother was standing beside me and I was trying to pronounce his name. And in the old times, actually, they even do it now, but I don't think they do it that often with like MS Dhoni or something, where they just write MS Dhoni. They don't write Mahendra Singh Dhoni. Or they do, or they name, uh, what was that? They might actually do that, but I haven't actually noticed it right now. But then at the time, they used to do that. And I was struggling to pronounce his name. It's a play of syllables, obviously, but then I was struggling to pronounce his name. But then I did end up doing it, and I was just surprised. I remember I watched like the first few overs of his batting, and then for some reason I slept off. That's why I remember that it was not a weekday because I would have been in school, or maybe I was in school and I came back. I'm not really sure. And then I woke up. When I woke up, India was about 280, 270 or so, and then this guy was still batting, and this guy had scored about 150, 160 at the time. I was like, wow. I mean, even at the time, I was like, this guy has scored half the runs or more, and he's still batting. And I mean, for the mind that I had at the time, for a 7 year old, possibly, I'm not too sure when this game happened. I know this happened before the World Cup, but I'm not sure exactly when it happened. So for a 7 year old, 6 year old person, even for that mind, I was like, this guy was batting before I slept. This guy is still batting after I woke up. What the hell is going on? That's the sort of impact that particular innings had on me. And there were a couple of instances like this. There's obviously the 2007 horror show that I witnessed, obviously. And at this time, I was slightly more into the game. And, uh, the Bangladesh result wasn't necessarily something that I saw coming at the time. And there were expectations of from people like Dhoni, obviously. Obviously, they were the bigger people, but then I wasn't really that logical or thinking of the game as I am now. Um, Slightly forward few months later to the 2017 20 World Cup, that's probably the first proper memory that I have of watching a tournament. And I do remember a lot of the games. Though the unfortunate thing was that for most of the games, I actually slept early because I had school the next day, and I mean, it's not like I'm right now where I'm 21, 22. I can essentially do anything I want. It's my decision, it's my time management and things like that. But at the time, it wasn't. And I mean, to be fair, it happened in South Africa, so I don't think the games ended well. The games ended before 12. I think they extended well up to 2 a.m. or something. I'm not really sure of this, but that's essentially what I remember from the time. But what I do remember is the day games, the India Australia one that I watched throughout. I remember the finals. I remember the day after, I mean, the morning when I woke up and found out that the India Pakistan game was a bowl out. The bowl out I had never watched before, and that was something new. That is something that I still remember. I was like, the game tied, the whole drama, the way my dad described the game to me, and stuff like that. So 2017 20 World Cup was my first memory. But the reason I say all these things is actually leading up to the 2008 Test series between India and Australia. I mean, the historic Test series for probably all the wrong reasons, apart from that one Indian win. And I remember because the SCG test, I don't really remember anything from the game, to be honest, apart from that last day. Because that last day, I actually woke up probably for the first time in my life for that final day's play. And I woke up in the morning, usually about 5:30 or something. Not really sure when the game started. Probably would have at 5:30 in the morning. And I watched it throughout, and there were decisions that were made that were just baffling. I mean, everybody knows what I'm exactly talking about here. And that day, there was just complete hatred that I had never really felt in my life for anything. But I did feel that hatred that day, and it was something that I still cannot. I mean, I've obviously felt hatred of that sort many more times after that, but then that was probably the first time I did, and that was the part that is leading up to the Perth test. Uh, in the Perth test, I remember talking to my brother, and we were, I think, walking from school or probably to school or something. Uh, we were talking just before the game, I think, team selections, or maybe it was the first day or something like that. We were talking. He was actually telling me, he's older than me by 3 years. He was actually telling me about how quick the Perth surface is, Waka. It's known as Western Australia Cricket Association. That pitch is so fast, bouncy, four pacers, whatever he was telling me about at the time. And he was telling me how difficult it was going to be for India to even survive in the test match. And Then I saw the Indian team actually win that test match. So, and at the time we won, I'm not sure if it was a weekend, the winning day, but for some reason I do have a good recollection of certain events of the day, so I think it may have been a weekend. So yeah, um, absolutely fantastic test match, and that's one of the memories that I do have. Even though we went on to lose the series, I think it was 2-1 or 3-1. Doesn't really matter. But yeah, that's one of my good memories that I have, like good recollection of memories that I have for an India Australia game. The thing that uh, is about us Indian fans who have, I mean, I have just watched test matches for the past decade properly, and maybe a couple of years before that. Uh, there are a lot of people who have watched test matches for 30 years, 20 years, stuff like that. They have watched through the golden era of Sehwag, Dravid, Tendulkar, Lakshman, Ganguly, Kumble, Zahir Khan, Harbhajan Singh, a team consisting of all these players, along with people like Irfan Pathan. There were like openers at the time. There was Wasim Jafar for some time. There was Dinesh Karthik. There was, I mean, I wouldn't want to name Akash Chopra, but then he was around for a year or so. And then even Dhoni was part of this whole mix at some point of time. For all these people, they have a certain baggage. And this baggage is the loss that India has in the away tours, in test matches especially. Yes, there have been moments where we have created history, like the Perth Test. There is obviously the England tour in 2007. Uh, and way before that, obviously, we have won test matches. It's not like this is the first victory that we have had. But there was always the Indian collapse. There was always the Indian disappointment. There was always a sense of, yeah, we won this test match, but then we're probably going to lose the series, something like that. Or there were probably other influencing factors that made the test match victory for India, which probably wouldn't have happened in a normal scenario. Something like that. So when you have all this baggage of all the losses, I mean, forget all those decades of historic test matches that India have been part of. Let's just think of this decade. When I say this decade, I mean 2010 onwards, especially after the World Cup win. We lost 4-0 to Australia, 4-0 to England. We lost a couple of test series to South Africa, I remember. We have lost test series to New Zealand. We then went on to lose to Australia, I think 4-0 or 3-0 or something. We lost to England in the 2014 Lords series where we won the Lords test match. I remember us losing the test series, I think 3-1 or maybe 2-1. We lost a home series to England 2-1. We have lost another, like, I mean, with the Virat Kohli thing, we have already lost to England, South Africa, New Zealand, stuff like that. So there are all these test losses away from home against the Sena countries, such as South Africa, England, New Zealand, Australia. And there may have been brilliant moments like the Lord's Test match in 2014. I remember another Test match against South Africa that we almost won or something like that. But there was, I think, South Africa were surviving in the last day. I remember that Test match. And there have been Test matches like this, right? But there have been so many horrid moments. And there was all this baggage that essentially told me before the start of the series, before the start of the second test, before the start of the third test, before the start of the fourth test, before the day 5 of the fourth test, that India are probably going to lose this 2-1. India are probably going to lose the series 3-1. Before the start of today's play, I was like, rain gods, please help us for the draw. Somebody, anybody, Pujara, Rohit Sharma, somebody, just battle it out, play all the deliveries that you can, draw the game. Do something, do anything. This World Test Championship that is coming up, do something, do anything that you can, draw the game. And it just shows the change in mentality from that generation of players to this generation of players. I mean, to even attempt to chase the target. And I mean, the fact that they did successfully is obviously the reason that we're all talking about this. But then I remember the first test match that Virat Kohli captained. This was before Dhoni's retirement. It was actually in the same series in Australia. The first test match that Virat Kohli captained I remember we had a target of about 360, 370 in the last day, and Murli Vijay got out for 99. Virat Kohli scored about 140, 150. And till the time Vijay was in the crease, we were actually going to win the test match. It almost looked like, I mean, it wasn't like we were going to win the test match, like we just needed 50 runs or something. But we needed runs that should have been scored. And on a day like a normal day, we would have probably scored those runs. But then we unfortunately fell short. But that was sort of the change in mentality the first time that we saw from this Indian side. And today has probably finished off this whole circle of test match cricket that the Indian team has been playing under Virat Kohli. And I mean, this is not to say that other teams weren't as good, or this is in to say that this team is the greatest or something like that. It's just it's probably just an indication of what change in mentality can do, then much more than what an increase in talent or a decrease in talent can affect. And it's just brilliant. And as I said, I mean, there are videos to show proof of this. The fact that I have said literally that I expect India to lose to 1. And on any other given day, India would have probably lost the series to 1. Maybe not today. They would have probably lost it in Sydney. Or was it Sydney? Yeah, it was Sydney. In Sydney, where Ashwin and Vihari battled it out. On any other given day, once one of those shots could have been miscued slightly, could have been caught, there could have been a collapse, and there would have been probably talks of how valiant this effort was, or how incredible the performances of all these debut people and an inexperienced Indian side was. But at the end of the day, it would have probably been a loss. And it's actually it's just brilliant. I mean, right now I'm having so much trouble with the words for some reason, but yeah, it's just brilliant. And the there are so many things to talk about. I mean, let's just get back from this whole story way of presenting to an actual fact and how I usually present my videos. Uh, Before the start of the series, I obviously made the video. I said that India is probably going to lose the series 2-1, but then they have played really well. This game was not perfect because the first innings, Marnus Labuschagne really played well. Steven Smith played well. Well, I mean, he did get out pretty early, to be fair. But then, who was the guy who played well? There was Cameron Green who played well. There was Matthew Wade who got some runs. Australia had about on the first day they had about 270 to 80. But then they did have about 370 runs in the first innings. And when I saw the first innings of India, and I saw that 186 for 6, I was like, here we go again. And I was like, you know what, it's fine. They're probably going to have a lead of about 100 and 130 again. And we're probably going to have to battle it out. And by the time there had already been rain on the second day, so I was like, you know what, this game is probably going to get rained out like the last year. Last year, I don't think it was raining here. I think it was raining in Sydney. But then, like last year, it's probably going to rain out, and they're probably going to survive this. In come Washington Sundar and Shardul Thakur. I mean, I've seen them both bat all right in IPL. I've seen Shardul Thakur win a game or two for CSK. I've seen him hit boundaries here and there for CSK. I've seen Washington Sundar score about 20s, 30s, a couple of six here and there. And then there was always the reputation that Washington Sundar had, that he was sort of an all-rounder. I mean, when I was about to say from his early days, but he's still early, he's like 21 or 22. So that's the reputation that Washington Sundar had, and the slight reputation with the bat that Shardul Thakur had. But to actually score in mid-60s, both of them, and to create a partnership, it wasn't like Shardul Thakur was batting with an Ajinkya Rahane, and Rahane probably shepherded him through the difficulties, and then Thakur scored some boundaries here and there to get that 60. This was an innings constructed together by these two people, who had probably never batted together ever in their life, who had probably never been in such a situation. They were obviously never been in the situation because it was a debut game for him, and a debut game. It wasn't a debut for Shardul Thakur, but I think he got injured in his debut game. So it was that type of an innings, that type of a situation that they were presented with, and this is just those two, right? The talk before the game was obviously about 13 versus 1013. It was the sort of thing that was going around Twitter and stuff like that, where the collective number of wickets that the Indian team had was 13. And I happened to find out that Rohit Sharma had two of them. So it was essentially 11. So T. Natarajan, Shardul Thakur, Mohammad Siraj. To think that Mohammad Siraj was the lead of this attack, and I mean, even Ashwin wasn't there in this team, right? So it wasn't like, you know what, just Bumrah is gone, at least Ashwin is there. No, Ashwin is not there. So amidst all these things, to win the test match, it was just brilliant to watch. Probably, definitely the best test series that I've watched in my life. Possibly the best test match. I'm not too sure. Well, considering the circumstances, I think probably the best test match that I have watched. But yeah, I wouldn't want to just give these words out randomly. The fact of the matter is that at the start of the series, we did not have Ishant Sharma and Bhuvneshwar Kumar. I don't think we had Ravindra Jadeja for the first game, but we can argue that. We did not have Mohammad Shami from the second game onwards added to the list. We then also did not have Virat Kohli added to the list. We did not have Rohit Sharma for the first two games. We then did not have Umesh Yadav from the middle of a game. We basically did not have our number two, number three, number four fast bowlers in the lineup. And it was just Bumrah, who wasn't there for the fourth game. So, and even in the batting, to be fair, the batting wasn't that big of a problem, even though Virat Kohli was gone. It was a big problem when Virat Kohli was gone after the 36 all out. But then we had resources to fill in to the gap. It wasn't like we had nobody in the squad. I mean, people like KL Rahul, who was available till the third test, did not get a game in. And there were a lot of people who were actually asking him for him to be played. And that just shows the strength in this Indian lineup, and that's just brilliant. I mean, the words like grit, resilience, and bravery and stuff like that have been used. I'm not going to use them because it's kind of obvious that there was all of that. But this whole memory, and yeah, it was in Australia. This was against Australia. This wasn't against a random, West Indies or a Sri Lanka or a Pakistan. I mean, India won't play Pakistan in test matches. But then it wasn't a team like that which could be beaten. It was against the best. Well, I don't think it's the best bowling lineup. I think it's probably the second best bowling lineup in the world, and in their home conditions. So yeah, absolutely fantastic. Um, what else to say? Like, I mean, on one hand, we had the innings of Shubman Gill, which was just laden with beautiful strokes. There was the innings of Rishabh Pant, which had a certain aggressiveness to it. I mean, the Gill ones were more. I mean, he was an aggressive opener, obviously he was, but then his runs were more textbook shots. Your Rishabh Pant's runs were more Rishabh Pant's shots. And there was this Cheteshwar Pujara who batted for 200 and something balls for 50 odd runs, which was possibly one of the most important innings of the day. Like, I don't understand the Chiteshwar Pujara criticism. I mean, I'm sorry, I do understand the criticism that Pujara receives. I don't see the reason why there is so much criticism. The one thing that I would say about it is that the difference between Pujara of 2018-19 and this season is that this time around he hasn't actually been able to convert those 150 ball 60s or 150 ball 40s to a 250 ball 100, 250 ball 120. That's what he normally does. He has this very slow start and then he picks up his next 100 runs. Let's say he gets the first 100 with a strike rate of 35. He'll get the next 100 with a strike rate of 65, which will potentially put his overall strike rate to a 50, 52. So that's what Pujara did last season. This time around, he has been getting much better deliveries. He has been getting out a peach of a delivery. And people could argue that once you are in that type of a defensive mode, there's always going to be that one delivery that's going to get you out because that's coming. There is no, I mean, when you're going to face the best attack in the world, as a lot of people proclaim it to be, then you're definitely going to get deliveries that are going to get you out, especially in a condition that's going to allow them to have that. So the one thing that I will say about it is that 100 ball 100 he scored 11 runs of his first 100 balls or something like that. Wouldn't there have been maybe 5 to 10 balls here and there where he could have probably scored a single? And that's the one thing that does come to my mind. Like, it's maybe he could look into rotating the strike slightly more. I'm not saying go score boundaries, right? I'm not even saying to have a strike rate of 40, 50. All I'm saying is don't have so many. You're essentially putting pressure on yourself. Maybe not on yourself. Maybe Pujara doesn't feel the pressure when he is batting on 10 runs from 100 balls. Maybe even the non-striker isn't feeling the pressure because this is a team. Everybody knows what they're supposed to do. And everybody knows that Pujara is going to do this. So there is no reason for you to be surprised by the fact that he's doing this, or shocked, or get pressured by him doing that. But what it does do is, as essentially this is a 450 over game, and as a team or as fans of a team, you would want your team to win, or at least try to win. What this does is when Pujara has 11 runs of 100 balls, and let's say he gets a piece of a delivery, he gets out, he has blunted the attack by playing for 17 overs, but then he has scored only 11 runs. So at the end of the day, to win a test match, yes, you have to get 20 wickets to win a test match. You can't win a test match by not getting 20 wickets, unless the opposition happens to be the sort of team that declares and make a wrong decision by declaring. So that doesn't happen often. So when you have to take 20 wickets, you also have to score more than your opposition. I mean, that's a certain fact. I mean, you can't win a test match by not scoring more than your opposition. There is no Duckworth-Lewis in test matches. Yeah, there's definitely not any Duckworth-Lewis or anything of the sort. You have to score at least 1 run more than your opposition to win a test match. And when Pujara scores 11 runs of 17 overs, the problem isn't that he has scored 11 runs of 17 overs. The problem that some people have is that he gets out immediately after having this type of an innings and not having that small push that he did in the last year. And as I said, it's not something that's worth criticizing him so much over. It's almost as if everybody has been criticizing him. And I didn't have a problem with it simply because I wasn't looking forward to India winning the test series. I was looking forward to India surviving the test series. And from that point of view, I was like, mate, 50 overs, 50 runs, go for it. I couldn't care less. But when you're going to have the winning mentality, it's important that you don't put yourself in the situation that he sometimes puts himself in. And to be fair, right? I mean, this is probably the first time it has happened that this type of a thing has created a problem, because this time around in this series he has had his 3 slowest 50s. His whole career, a guy who has scored more than 6,000 runs, his whole careers, three slowest 50s have been in the same series, in probably three consecutive test matches. That's not something that happens often, and this is obviously the first time that has happened with Pujara. So I'm pretty sure that it was just probably a case of where he was like, you know what, there is no Virat Kohli in this side. So it has to be between me and Rahane to carry this whole batting lineup, which was, to be honest, true for most occasions. Yes, the other people scored runs faster, they enabled us to win the game, but the backbone were these two. And maybe that was probably one of the reasons he was like, you know what, you're not getting me out. You can bowl the pitch of a delivery whenever you want, and if that pitch of a delivery happens to take my wicket, it happens to take my wicket. I'm not giving you my wicket. So maybe that type of a mentality to the most extreme extent was maybe employed by Pujara. And that's not something that I'm going to criticize him for, most definitely not, because that's logical thinking and that's the correct thinking in my opinion. So yeah, so that's the Pujara saga to be fair. Um, I mean, I haven't talked of people like Mohammad Syed and how his 5 wickets, the fact that he lost his parent and still played and stuff like that is just brilliant. Um, yeah, people like Ravichandran Ashwin, the first three test matches he got what 14 wickets was it? I think it was about 13, 14 wickets. Um, he obviously battered that innings in Sydney. I think it was probably his best away series of his career in terms of the way he was bowling. And yeah, one of the primary reasons of India winning this test series. Um, there is obviously this that I actually wanted to show and I should have shown earlier. Yeah, this is the 233 innings that I was looking at, and this did happen in 2003 2004. So yeah, I was about 5 at the time, close to 5, and yeah, this 4 of the last delivery was something that etched in my memory. The thing that I was actually going to show you was the India squad for the first two test matches against England. The first two tests I think are in Chennai, and the next two are in Ahmedabad, where the third test match is I think the pink ball test. So that's something that I'm looking forward to, and it's in the new Ahmedabad stadium, so that's also going to be fun. But the first two tests are in Chennai, so possibly a turner, hopefully a turner to be fair. The squad is well this, and what I would like to say is that Rohit Sharma is probably opening. In my opinion, Mayank Agarwal has to open. It's yeah, I do understand the Shubman Gill mania that's going to start, and the fact that everybody is going to call for Gill to be starting. Well, yeah, there is time for that, but I think Mayank Agarwal was in just mental form, and he's still. I mean, he scored what? He has an average of I think 60 or something in Test matches. So that's because of the start that he had in the last season in Australia. So I think Agarwal and Rohit Sharma have to open. Pujara at 3, Kohli at 4, Rahane at 5. The question is, what do you do with the rest of the team? Because for me, there are 3 questions. Yeah, actually, few questions. But then the first question is, do you want to play a 7-4 or a 6-5? I was adamant that it should be a 6-5 before the start of the Australia series. And to be fair, I was proved right. And they did actually, after the mistake in the first test, they started picking the 6-5 combination, and it was very helpful in the case of injuries. So that's not the reason I presented. But then it was pretty useful. And in India, would you want to still go with the 6-5 combination? I would say yes. But the fifth bowler has to be somebody like a Jadeja, who is obviously not available. So that's one question that you have to answer. The second question that you have to answer is, in India, you have to go with 2 spinners. The question that needs to be answered is, do you need the third spinner? Another question that needs to be answered is, Riddhiman Saha versus Pant. Riddhiman Saha is by far a much better keeper than Pant. especially in Indian conditions in the turning track. He's just a mental wicket keeper. He's as close to Dhoni as I have seen anybody be in terms of the turning track. And so, but then he doesn't offer all that much with the bat. Rishabh Pant, I don't know if his batting in India is that good. He has played a couple of test matches, I'm pretty sure, but his batting isn't all that well, great. So, what do you do in that position? Because I'm sure that people are suddenly now going to go, you know what, Pant has to start. I wonder if the Indian selection team makes a different choice. I'm pretty sure they won't, but then yeah, I'm kind of torn in between these two because of well the qualities that they possess, which is slightly different. So now that that's another question that needs to be answered, the next question is obviously, as I said, if you're going to have, I mean, if you're going to have your number six as your wicket keeper, the number seven, there are, I think, two to three options. There's obviously Hardik Pandya. I don't know what the fitness level of Hardik Pandya is, to be honest. If he is going to be a pure batsman, don't pick him. If he is going to give you 10 overs every innings, and by the way, this team that I'm talking about is not necessarily for the day night test match because it has to have a slightly different team. I'm talking of the first two test matches because this squad is just for the first two test matches. And I sincerely believe that if Ishant Sharma is fully fit, then Ishant Sharma and Jasprit Bumrah have to be the only two fast bowlers in the side. Ashwin and Akshar Patel have to be the two spinners in the side. The question is, what about the fifth bowler? I am a huge advocate of five bowling options, and it's for me a toss up between Washington Sundar and Hardik Pandya for the fifth slot. Maybe a Shardul Thakur, but then I don't think the Chennai surface is going to require the services of a third frontline fast bowler, even though he's a CSK man, right? So that's kind of the interesting part here. But I actually think that maybe a Washington Sundar would be a very good option in the Chennai track. And yeah, so my lineup would probably be this. But then here's the thing. India have traditionally, for the last, at least in this decade, at least in the MS, we for a lot of time we played four bowlers, and that was just how we did. So that's why I think two spinning, two fast bowlers with the third spinning option is not that big of a deal. So I would rather pick that. But then if Pandya is going to give you overs, then and he's confident of doing that because I don't think he is. Because that's why I don't understand why he's in the test team. Because in Australia, I know that he bowled a couple of overs here and there, but then he did not really want to, and his back wasn't something that allowed him to do that, and that was pretty much obvious, even by the fact that he never bowled in the IPL. So I don't know why he has been picked for the test team. I just don't get it, to be fair. But I mean, if he has been picked as your batsman, then I do understand the logic. But then if he's going to be picked as a batsman, there is no place for him in the side. So we might as well forget him. So that's why I think Pandya should not be picked because I don't think he's good enough to be bowling right now, especially with his fitness. And I mean, it's just not his fitness, it's more the fact that he will aggravate his uh, potentially injury scare sort of back issue, and I think he also has some thigh issue or something. No, not thigh issue. I think it's only the back issue. So and the way he lands while bowling, so that's why I don't think should be bowling, and that's why I think Pandya should not be picked. Um. So yeah. So now having looked at the lineup, right? So now we have Rohit Sharma, Mayank Agarwal, Pujara, Kohli, Rahane, keeper Washington Sundar, Akshar Patel, Ashwin, Ishant Sharma, Jasprit Bumrah. I think we should be picking Ridhiman Saha as a wicket keeper because he's the better wicket keeper. Because I don't want my wicket keeper to bat well. I mean, I do want my wicket keeper to bat well, But given an option between a better keeper or a better batsman, I would pick a better keeper in this scenario. I said better batsman for the Australia series because that was what was required from my opinion, and that's why I picked Pant over Saha before the start of the first test. And I'm using the same logic, but this time I think a different thing is required because it's going to be a spin track, and that's why I think Saha has to be picked. The other question that could be asked is, would you rather pick Kuldeep Yadav and Ashwin as the two spinners and go for, I don't know, go for Pandya, Bumrah, and Ishan Sharma? By the way, I'm saying Ishan Sharma here, but he's not really fit. I don't really mind picking Mohammad Siraj, so that's not really, you give me a choice between these two, I'd obviously pick Ishan Sharma. But then Mohammad Siraj is somebody I would really take, and there's no issues for me there. And the same goes for Shardul Thakur. But I'm pretty sure Siraj would be ahead of the list or ahead in the list. So yeah, Kuldeep Yadav, I don't know. I mean, I know why he's picked, but I don't see a universe where Kuldeep Yadav plays. So yeah, they may go for a mystery factor, but I think it's just a waste of time. I don't see Kuldeep Yadav as a good test match bowler or even a good bowler for that matter of fact. I think he has a lot to improve, and I am looking forward to seeing him though, to be fair, because he's a left arm leg spinner. We don't have a lot of that in the world. So yeah, it'll be fun to have him there, but I don't think he is, well, he has to improve, that's what I'm going to say. Um yeah, I don't know. I mean, the net bowlers and the standard bowlers, there are a couple of interesting names there, but that's not something that I'm focusing on. Uh, KL Rahul, I mean, I think there are better people in the lineup ahead of him. I think Pant is ahead of him. If Pant doesn't start, Pant is ahead of KL Rahul. So I don't, and I think given an option between Shubman Gill and KL Rahul, I would pick Shubman Gill. So there is that. Um, so obviously, I have made some contentious decisions here by picking Shubman Gill. Sorry, by picking Agarwal ahead of Gill, by picking Saha ahead of Pant, and by possibly picking three spinners and two fast bowlers. Not something that Virat Kohli does, to be fair. So yeah, that's all I think I wanted to show. And actually, that's all there is for this video. I have talked way too much than I had actually planned, way too long than I actually planned, to be honest. And yeah, it's actually 43 minutes. Wow. Yeah, there is really nothing else to talk about, and that's the, well, that's the sad part. I mean, I would actually get a few topics to talk about here and there. I do not really want to talk about the Tim Paine saga. Um, I mean, he said things. Australians usually do say that stuff, and if they're going to lose, then that's obviously backfired on them. In the past, it never did, but then in the recent past, it has. So maybe they should choose their words better, but then that's really not something for me to say because that's how they play their game. Um, yeah. Talking of Australia, to be honest, I wasn't blown away by Marnus Labuschagne, and I say this considering the fact that he was probably the top scorer of the series. I mean, he scored a century here, he almost scored a century in the previous game, and he had useful contributions even in the second innings and here and there. The fact of the matter is that the first two test matches probably had the more difficult batting tracks. I mean, the last two test matches were probably difficult for us because we were the fourth innings. But as far as batting tracks go, I think the last two test matches were the batting tracks. And it was no surprise that Marnus Labuschagne scored in those two test matches. I was disappointed that he did not do well in the first two test matches. I was surprised, happily, by the fact that Steven Smith was struggling in the first two test matches too. So kudos to Ashwin for that, but that's not something that I expected. I think Warner's injury was sort of a big blow for Australia, to be honest. Um, Even the Warner that came back, Warner in the second innings probably slightly looked himself, but the other three innings that he played, he was like, yeah, fine, whatever. It could have been anybody else, and you wouldn't have really noticed. And Australia do have some issues in their team, and it's something that I never really spoke about before the series, but Matthew Wade and Travis Head, these two were the people who started. And I actually saw this team and tried to remember whatever I could about the Australia side of 2 years ago. And Usman Khawaja, Sean Marsh, I almost felt like I still trust those two more than I trust these two. And I mean, yeah, the batting orders are obviously different, but then there was something, I don't know, I've never really seen Travis Head do really well, like score 500 runs in 5 test matches. I can't recollect Matthew Wade doing that, and that's probably one of the reasons. Um, yeah, so they obviously have an issue in the opening slot. I mean, Bill Bukowski, he got injured and he came back, he got injured again. Marcus Harris was the guy who played all right last 2 years before, but then this time around he was all right in the fourth test. But he has had some poor outings. Obviously, that's why he wasn't playing in the first two test matches. Um, so with Warner, they have an issue. Like, I mean, when I say with Warner, I mean a partner to the Warner is an issue that they have. For some reason, I mean, I know the reason, but Aaron Finch isn't in the reckoning, and rightly so, to be honest. They have their 3 and 4 sorted, and I think their number 5 is an issue again. Maybe, I mean, there has to be a person in the run in their domestic cricket who could fill that number 5 slot. Maybe it is Cameron Green, and that would probably have Tim Paine bat at 6, because he has to play. He may not be the right captain, but he has to play, because I don't think there is anybody better wicketkeeper in their country, even though he has made mistakes this season or this series. So him at number 6. Number 7, I mean, yeah, then they have their Pat Cummins and all those people. So maybe they have to find a good player to bat at number 6. I was actually surprised that they never went for the Moises Henriques sort of a player. I mean, Henriques was there in the squad, right? But he never featured. I thought that maybe they would feature him for Wade at some point of time in the series, but they never did do that. So that was interesting. Talking of World Test Championship, I didn't really look at it. I don't really understand now. I understood the table much better before this percentage thing. Uh, but right now, I haven't really looked at how the numbers work, so I can't really comment on it. But I don't know that India had like a 3-2 thing, 3 wins and 2 draws, or 4 wins and 1 loss was something that they could afford to do before this test match. So obviously we have won this. So I think we have to beat England 2-0 out of the 4 games, or we have to beat them. Yeah, we have to beat them like 2-0 or 3-1 or some shit like that. I'm not really sure. So there is that. So yeah, fun times ahead, interesting times ahead. And I've already crossed the 49th minute mark. I cannot let it cross the 50th minute mark. So yeah, that's all for this video slash podcast, guys. I'm pretty sure this is going to go into the podcast. So probably at the same time as it goes as a video, probably tomorrow morning, that is 20th of Jan. And yeah, please do share the content. Please do leave your comments on the video slash podcast, because I would love to know your cricketing memories or any sort of baggage or whatever the feelings that you had from an Indian perspective. What are the feelings that you had after the win, the moment that Rishabh Pant scored those runs, or anything like that? So yeah, that would be fun to watch, see, listen. Yeah, that's all. Thank you so much. Bye.